protests have been arrested amid the worst economic crisis the country has seen in decades. NBC News Chief Foreign Affairs Correspondent Andrea Mitchell has the latest.
Thousands of demonstrators spilling into the streets of Cuba this weekend, calling for an end to the 62-year communist regime. Chants of "We want freedom" echoing through the streets. Protesters dumping trash and throwing rocks. Demonstrations sparked by chronic food shortages and blackouts. In Miami, protests in solidarity with Havana.
We've been waiting for change for so long.
Maria Figueroa has family in Cuba.
I don't even know what their situation is right now.
For anti-regime anger that spread rapidly as more Cubans recently gained access to the internet. Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel today blaming the unrest on U.S. sanctions.
The lack of medicine and food, all those topics that are embedded in our society as dissatisfaction, what is the origin? It's a blockade.
They simply are not hearing the voices and will of the Cuban people. People deeply tired of the repression.
President Obama established diplomatic relations with Cuba and removed it from the U.S. list of state sponsors of terrorism. But the Trump administration put Cuba back on that list, imposing tougher sanctions, which President Biden has not lifted.
We call on the government of Cuba to refrain from violence and their attempts to silence the voice of the people of Cuba.
Andrea Mitchell reporting there. Let's go down.
All right, Shalom. This is Harwan Ban Yasha'Allah of the Lions Den Camp. I want to say Kal Halayim, La Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem Harakah Kodash, Ma'amaf. Double honor to the elder apostles of GMS and the elders. Shalom to you, Akim, Nakwate, my children that believe in sincerity and truth around the four corners of the earth. Yeah, man, what you see is mass unrest going on around the world in different places. And now you have situation in Haiti, situation in Nigeria. You already know overseas, in over there in Europe. And now you have basically a precursor to what's going to be happening here in America on a lower scale. Because all the stuff we're seeing happening in these other nations is coming here to America, to Babylon. All right. Now, what I want to focus on in this lesson is, the hidden hand of the shadow government, or who you would call Esau, or the banking elites that run America from Europe or whatever. Well, people hear them saying it, but they're not saying it boldly that it's America's fault. All right. You had a situation where Obama, when he was in office, he removed Cuba from the terrorist list. All right, started removing some of those sanctions that were put in place. All right, ever since the 60s. But as soon as Trump got in office, he put the sanctions back on. That's what people have been doing. I'm gonna read it for you in a second. All right, that's all they've been doing when they get in office. Going all the way back to Kennedy and Reagan, Jimmy Carter. That's how far this goes back, man. Jimmy Carter was the only president that really let up on Cuba. And the Cubans, of course, we know they're the tribe of Manasseh. All right, the biblical tribe of Manasseh. I want to touch on that aspect as well, because the Lord is raising up the children of Israel from their sleep. A lot of them won't wake up to the truth, and now that the elect are probably mostly sealed, The Lord is shaking up the nations, causing the unrest, like He said in the scriptures. These are all signs before His return. All right. I want to read this this article. Give you a little information on what's going on over there. All right. A little backstory to what's going on over there in Cuba. Now, you know, you already know the Gadites, what they did to the Gadites with the pipeline. See what they're doing to the dark skinned tribes from Judah, Benjamin, and now Levi over there in Haiti. Look at the Haitian president. It said it was DEA in connections to Miami, Florida, some Edomite in Florida. Right, dealing with the Haitian president, which caused unrest over there. Now we all know what America likes to do is push their demonocracy. That's their wine that they get the nations um, drunk off of. All right, their wine, their philosophy, their demonocracy, their Christianity, and that's what they use um, as a reason to put sanctions on these nations, to put pressure on them by putting sanctions on all these nations. These what you call proxy nations or smaller countries. By doing that, they put pressure on the country, and that caused the citizens to wind up doing what? Uprising against the ruling uh, uh, government at that moment. All right, or the delegates. So what happens is America put pressure on a nation just like Iran, just like Iraq, just like Libya, ultimately until the country seeks for a regime change. And that's what America's been pushing for. All right, what they call order out of chaos. Over the Middle East, they can't have a foothold in the Middle East unless they say it's a terrorist over there. That's why now you're hearing about Al Qaeda again, when America was just backing Al Qaeda. All right, use the Kurds against Al Qaeda, then switched up and joined Al Qaeda against the Kurds, and now they're going back using Al Qaeda again in the Middle East, saying Al Qaeda is back. So right at the moment where they're getting kicked out of occupying the Middle East with Iraq, Iran, and all these countries. Now all of a sudden America's saying what? The terrorists are back, so they gotta go. They might have to stay over there. Now you're hearing issues with Manasseh, Cuba. So what's happening? Now America's stepping in. See that? It's all about control, man. Now it's like, oh yeah, you gotta listen to your citizens. Like America, you would think that America is a good country, but it's not. The oppressor is talking about other people being oppressed by other countries. No, you know. So I'm gonna read this real quick. Um, it says, all right, let's get to the backstory dealing with all the sanctions that America put on Cuba. It has them in this condition, man. And besides that, the regime that was in place dealing with Castro, even though that bloodline, that family is not ruling anymore in Cuba or in office, the new guy that they have, even though he's not related to them, directly related to them, to the Castro family, this guy is still pushing the agenda of the Castro family. All right, so he's a puppet. He's always been a puppet from the beginning. So so the people over there have no food, no jobs, no wealth, no way of contacting people at times. Watch this, man. I'm about to read this, and look at all these damn sanctions that America still has in place on Cuba, and you'll see that it's America that's weakening that nation. All right, and so it says this. All right, so now it says the United States embargo against Cuba. All right, so of course you got some idiots out there that think that embargoes are the mark of the beast. People like ISUBK. Let me stick to the point. It says embargo. What is the meaning of an embargo? It says an official ban on trade or other commercial activity with a particular country, an embargo on grain sales, So they stop trade with a certain country. And that's what they've done. They've had embargoes on Cuba since the 60s, man. All right, actually since the 50s. So let's get into it real quick. It said the United States embargo against Cuba. All right, basically Manasseh. All right, it's the tribe of Manasseh. And that name Manasseh means whom he has forgotten. Now, why is Manasseh named whom he has forgotten? Well, the reason is their name set them up for their blessing. All right, because originally Manasseh was the firstborn out of Ephraim and what you would call Joseph. All right, because originally when it was just the 12 brothers, one of the brothers of Benjamin was Joseph in the time of Egypt. All right, that's the one that went into Egypt. Now Joseph had two sons. One of them was named Manasseh, the firstborn, and the second named Ephraim, Aparium. All right. Now the blessing was switched uh, with Jacob and Isaac. All right, they had to use Isaac. The Lord used Isaac when the spirit was Yahushua to put the blessing on Ephraim as the top tribe of the northern kingdom, and made the firstborn Manasseh become the second in place. But these were the war tribes, man, the warriors. Ephraim, Manasseh, Reuben, the northern kingdom. So the Lord's raising them up. He's raising up Ephraim. They just shot that little Puerto Rican boy a few months ago. Manasseh. Look at Reuben. Right, the Gadites. When they come at the Gadites, they really gonna come at Reuben as well, the Seminole Indians. All right. Then you have Judah. Look just like Reubenites. Okay. So now it says United States embargo against Cuba. The United States embargo against Cuba prevents American businesses, so any businesses in this place or around the world that's American, and businesses with commercial activities in the United States, so other countries that have investments or interests in America, they cannot do deals with Cuba either. All right. From conducting trade with Cuba with Cuban interests, man. So they stopped all these countries from conducting trade with Cuban interests. They can't do nothing tied with Cuba. All right. It is the most enduring trade embargo in modern history, just like they're saying it's one of the biggest protests. And now they cut off the media over there, the internet. That's oppression, man. That's a dictatorship. This guy, Diaz, the guy that's in office now, he's pushing the same agenda of the Castro, Raul Castro. All right. Even though they have free insurance, me growing up over here in Babylon, I was thinking that in Cuba that was a good place to go because of the insurance, free insurance. But of course they're gonna give free insurance and to a country where they're oppressing the hell out of them. Yeah, come on in here and get your free insurance, bill of health, so we can put more oppression on you, make more slaves out of people. All right. It says so they stopped all the nations from conducting trade with Cuban interests. It is the most enduring trade embargo in modern history. The United States first imposed an embargo on the sales of arms to Cuba on March 14th, 1958. That was going way back before the Cuban Missile Crisis. All right, during the Fulgencio Batista, all right, regime, during that regime. That was like 2 presidents before Fidel Castro, all right. Again, on October 19th, 1960, almost 2 years after the Cuban Revolution, they already had a revolution, right? Had led to the deposition of the Batista regime. So they had a revolution to get rid of that regime, the Cuban people. All right, so they keep rising up, and um, you know, it says the Cuban Revolution had led to the deposition of the Batista regime, so that president was ran out of office. The United States placed an embargo on exports to Cuba, except for food and medicine. All right, that's why they can give free medical. All right, because that's one of their biggest trades through medical and food. All right. After Cuba nationalized American-owned Cuban oil refineries without compensation. All right, so that's what Cuba's response was like. All right, well, we're gonna nationalize all the oil refineries. You know, on February 7th, 1962, the embargo was extended to include almost all exports. So that was America putting pressure on Cuba for nationalizing all American Cuban oil um, refineries. So in response to that, America was like, okay then, well, you can't export no food. So that's bullying, man. They just bullying. That's why the scriptures call America the hammer of the earth. Now everybody think all hell breaking loose just because of the ruling regime that's in power right now, but it's really because of the sanctions. And then you have Biden like, yeah, man, you gotta listen to the people. We ask that you don't put pressure on the people. Man. But what happened when somebody protests here in America? They get shot up with all kind of bullets and hit over the head by the police and thrown in jail. All right. The embargo no longer prohibits this. Since the year 2000, the embargo no longer prohibits the trade of food and humanitarian supplies. All right. So they was just. That's why scripture said they think it's themselves to be God, because what the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. So that's the position Esau trying to play. All right, because the scripture said we're gonna go to them for the want of all things, man. All right. Um, as of 2018, the embargo is enforced mainly through 6 statutes. All right, so they had about 6 different sanctions against Cuba, and it's still in place. A lot of them have not been removed. They still had that grip on that place, man. All right, they're giving it a squeeze to where it cannot thrive in its economy and trade, and it's rich in resources over there. The Trading with the Enemy Act of 1917, they got that one. The Foreign Assistance Act, they call Cuba the enemy. In 1961, the Cuban Assets Control Regulations of 1963, controlling the assets. The Cuban Democracy Act of 1992, the Helms-Burton Act of 1996, the Trade Sanctions Reform and Export Enhancement Act of 2000. The stated purpose of the Cuban Democracy Act of 1992 is to maintain sanctions on Cuba as long as the Cuban government refuses to move toward democratization. So they're trying to bring a democracy over there. That Greek mindset, the Greek rulership from America. Cuban government refuses to move toward democratization and greater respect for human rights. Well, yeah, like America has respect for human rights. The Helms-Burton Act further restricted United States citizens from doing business in or with Cuba. All right, because you had a lot of brothers and sisters. We have a brother here in the camp, and it's a struggle to get money to his family over there in Cuba, or even to travel and take money or spend money over there, because you have to have a certain license to do so. All right. It says from doing business in or with Cuba, so it's part of that embargo, and mandated restrictions on giving public or private assistance to any successor government in Havana, unless until certain claims against the Cuban government were met. They basically want America. They want to fully control Cuba. All right, but since they can't, they're controlling them with sanctions. All right. It says in 1999, President Bill Clinton, another Edomite, it says what he expanded the trade embargo. Man, expanded it, meaning like increased it, put more hell on that nation, crippling the nation even more. Embargo by also disallowing foreign subsidiaries of U.S. companies to trade with Cuba. In 2000, Clinton authorized the sale of food and humanitarian products to Cuba. So the food and the medicine again. So that make you think, oh, Clinton's doing something. No, he just Esau's a one-trick pony, man. He's just replaying the same instant replay from yesterday. You know, Clinton get in office, he removed the sanctions, he added the sanctions. The one before him, remove them, he put them back in place. He put them back in place, the one after him, remove them. You see how they doing? It's the shadow government that control the presidents, that put them in office, the puppets, that put people like Miguel Diaz-Canel, that's the president ruling over in Cuba right now. All right, and though he's not of the what's his name, man, Castro bloodline, he's still pushing that agenda of Raul Castro, all right, which is basically oppressing the people even more. All right, so it says Eisenhower. We know him. He's spoken of in the scriptures. All right, he's the one that put "In God We Trust" on the money and put "One Nation Under God" in their Pledge of Allegiance. All right, so he's an Edomite, mouth speaking great things. The United States imposed an arms embargo. So I want to read this because it'll let you see why Cuba is in the condition it's in. See, people just want to look at Cuba, see him marching, look at the president, and be like, yeah, he ain't doing it. Look at it, it's him. No, it's America. And then it's not even America, it's the shadow government that's using America, the whore, to put hell on Cuba and oppress that nation and steal its resources, man, and contracts and business, rerouting all that trade to steal all its resources, man. The United States imposed an arms embargo on Cuba on March 14th, 1958. During the armed conflict of 1953 and 58 between rebels led by Fidel Castro, all right, and Fulgencio Batista, the regime arms sales violated U.S. policy, which had permitted the sale of weapons to Latin American countries, which had signed the 1947 Inter-American Treaty of Reciprocal Assistance, Rio Treaty, as long as the weapons were not used for hostile purposes. All right, I'm gonna skip down to the point. So yeah, man, even during the time of the 60s, they were during the time of Eisenhower, still putting sanctions on Cuba. So now I'm gonna get to this point. I'm gonna get to some scriptures. In May 1960, the Cuban government began regularly and openly purchasing armaments from the Soviet Union. That's when in the 1960s, everything changed. Later on you had the Cuban Missile Crisis when Russia was giving Cuba nuclear missiles, ready to launch them at America. Scared the hell out of them with Kennedy. In May 1960, the Cuban government began regularly and openly purchasing arms from the Soviet Union. All right, because Soviet Union, Russia is the one that's going to strengthen all these nations. All right, citing the U.S. arms embargo in July 1960, the United States reduced the import quota of brown sugar from Cuba to 700,000 tons under the Sugar Act of 1948. And the Soviet Union responded by agreeing to purchase the sugar instead. Man, just like today, man, all these countries, they pushing America out, man. They like, yo, they done dealing with this place, man, because America uses the dollar and its embargoes to control these nations. And now check this out. All right, let's skip up to the point. During the time of John F. Kennedy, it says President John F. Kennedy extended measures by executive order, first widening the scope of the trade restrictions on February 8th, 1962, announced on February 3rd, and again on March 23rd, 1962. These measures expanded the embargo to include all imports of products. So they weren't allowing any products to be imported into Cuba, all right, under Kennedy. Because he was such a great guy, right? Causing these families to suffer over there. These measures expanded the embargo to include all imports of products containing Cuban goods, even if the final products had been made or assembled outside of Cuba, man. So America could not import any Cuban goods, even if it was made somewhere else, but it was owned by Cuba. On August 3rd, 1962, the Foreign Assistance Act was amended to prohibit aid to any country that provides assistance to Cuba. Wow, man. 1962, September. Kennedy formally expanded the Cuban embargo to include all Cuban trade. Damn. Except for the non-subsidized sale of food and medicines again. Just another keep them alive over there, man. Following the Cuban Missile Crisis, October 1962, Kennedy imposed travel restrictions on February 1963, and the Cuban Assets Control Regulations were issued on July 1963. Okay, so that was after the Cuban Missile Crisis. So they kept putting sanctions. Right. Let's get to the point. All right, now let's bring it up to the time that a lot of us are familiar with during the time of Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan. All right, I was born around the time of Ronald Reagan, in 1980s. So check this out. The restrictions on U.S. citizens traveling to Cuba lapsed on March 19th, 1977. The regulation was renewable every 6 months. Man, he said they try to, just like collectors, they try to get it to bleed into the next month so they can keep the grip on everybody, keep their hands in your pocket. The regulation was renewable every 6 months, but President Jimmy Carter did not renew it. All right. And the regulation on spending US dollars in Cuba was lifted shortly afterwards. So Jimmy Carter was probably one of the best presidents dealing with Cuba because he lifted all some of those sanctions and the fact that you couldn't use money over there. So so he didn't renew it. And the regulation on spending US dollars in Cuba was lifted shortly afterwards. President Ronald Reagan, once he got back in, he reinstated the trade embargo on April 19th, 1982, though it was now only restricted to business and tourist travel. All right, so because America doesn't want Cuba and these other nations becoming more powerful. All right, America had to be the dominant force. That's what they try to be, the hammer of the earth. It says President Ronald Reagan reinstated the trade embargo on April 19th, 1982, 1 year after I was born. Though it was now only restricted to business and tourist travel and did not apply to travel by U.S. government officials, employees of news or filmmaking organizations, persons engaging in professional research, or persons visiting their close relatives. That's why you hear about people from here traveling to Cuba, a lot of Cubans going back to visit their family. All right, but you don't hear about a lot of Jakes just traveling over there because of these embargoes. All right, and it says what? So they use filmmaking crews, and how they do with that is it'd be a bunch of Edomites going over there, film crews, shooting movies and shit, saying they're doing research, when ultimately they're part of the DEA, the FBI, and they setting up their damn spies over there and shit, CIA. All right. It says this has been modified subsequently with the present regulation. Um, so let's get to the point. The current regulation does not prohibit travel. All right. So it doesn't prohibit travel by U.S. citizens to Cuba per se, but it makes it illegal for U.S. citizens to have transactions, spend money, or receive gifts. So it's hard for a lot of Manasseh or Cubans over here in America to send gifts or receive gifts or money to their people over there that's suffering, man. All right. And so imagine having family over there and you can't send money to them because of these damn embargoes. All right. That's why the Lord gonna get Esau out the way, man. The current regulation does not prohibit travel by U.S. citizens to Cuba per se, but it makes it illegal for U.S. citizens to have transactions, spend money, or receive gifts in Cuba under most circumstances without a U.S. government office of foreign assets control issued license. You have to have a foreign assets control license, a FAC license. All right, OFAC, to be able to spend money over there, U.S. dollars, or give money to families over there. Man, so if you hand a piece of paper to one of your family members, they'll lock you up for that. Since even paying unavoidable airfare ticket taxes into a Cuban airport would violate this transaction law. So even if you was at an airport there and you was paying a little tax or paying a little something into a machine or anything, and you use American dollars, uh, you would be breaking the law. It is effectively impossible for ordinary tourists to visit Cuba without breaking the monetary transaction rule. So, all right, once you go over there, you basically looked at as a criminal if you try to help anybody out over there. All right, I'm gonna read this article and get to the scriptures, man. Because if you read the news, they're spinning it and just blaming it on Cuba when really America has a very prominent purpose or responsibility in the suffering of the people over there, man, with these damn embargoes. And they like, yeah, Cuba, y'all gotta listen. Y'all not listening. What do you want? They want the Cuban regime to listen to America to become a democracy. All right, so it's the Cuban president is an oppressor, a puppet, and you have America, the oppressor, that's manipulating things over there, causing order out of chaos. It says, why has Cuba exploded into protest? It goes beyond the U.S. embargo and pandemic. No, it doesn't. Cuba has been promising economic reforms for years that have not materialized. People don't have hope in getting out of the crisis, said economists. Although she did not take part in the historic protests that rocked the entire island of Cuba on Sunday, Caridad Montez, 50 years old, says she understands why they took place. Yeah, she's 50 years old. She saw all the embargoes that America's been putting on that place. It's very simple, said Montez, a Havana resident. They are tired of the hardships and want changes for the better. Cuba has been grappled with acute shortages of food and medicine throughout the pandemic, man. All right, so that's one of the last things they got. Damn. You know, the embargoes America has it so tight squeezed that they allowing food and medicine, but a small percentage of it. And now because of the pandemic, that really shut down a lot of trade going in and out of that place. So we know who the pandemic was started by. See, the mystery of iniquity is already working. All right, Esau. Cuba's government blames the economy. So like Cuba's government blames the economic crisis squarely on the decades-old U.S. trade embargoes on Cuba, and that's true. All right. So um, it says which was tightened by the Trump administration. So it's Trump. This is all the workings of Trump right here, and whoever was controlling Trump, Donald Trump. So he tightened the embargo on the people over there. And when Biden, demonic ass, got in office, he didn't loosen any of the embargoes. It says, Cuba's government blames the economic crisis squarely on the decades-old U.S. trade embargo on Cuba, which was tightened by the Trump administration, as well as on the fallout from the pandemic. In a speech Monday, President Miguel Diaz-Canel said the U.S. politics of economic asphyxiation, wow, man, it's choking them out, was having a cumulative effect on Cuba. But the embargo is not solely to blame for Cuba's woes. One of the most important factors that has led to years of economic stagnation is the country's Soviet-style, centrally planned economy and its hesitation to adopt market-oriented reforms that other remaining communist countries have taken. All right, so they're saying it's a communist country, and America wants to make it a democracy. Reforms in Cuba do not depend on the embargo, and the embargo should be eliminated unilaterally, independently from reforms in Cuba. Both 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 cause problems, said Pavel Vidal, a former Cuban central bank economist who teaches whatever. All right, so yeah, man, just a little more understanding of what's going on over there. It's basically a bunch of people pointing the finger at each other that's in power. All right. Um, America's embargoes are depraving Cuba of thriving in their economy. And now with the pandemic, per se, they have more restrictions on trade over there, and with food and medicine now. So if people don't have no food and medicine, they're gonna be willing to die to live now. That's called a revolution, a sedition. This is 2nd Ezra 15 and 16. And this is ultimately coming to this place, America, man, Babylon, that's been putting sanctions on everybody and embargoes and shit. And now all these nations are going to pull away from this place, as they're doing with blockchain and other setups tying into Russia and China. All right. Now you're going to have sedition, as you see in the other countries. You're going to have it right here in America. But these are the signs to look for before Yahweh Shai returns, man, and brings order upon this earth, man. 2nd Ezra 15 and 16. For there shall be sedition among men, and invading one another, All right. And they shall not regard their kings, uh, nor princes in the course of their actions shall stand in their power, man. So the people are going to take the power back into themselves. All right. Um, so now let's get this word sedition. Because right here it says what? Sedition, a conduct or speech inciting people to rebel against the authority of a state or monarch. So conduct or speech inciting people to rebel against the authority of a state or a monarch. All right. Um, and that's what's happening, man. They're calling for a revolt against uh, the ruling regime right now. And it's going to happen here in Babylon as well. You're going to have two Americas, Donald Trump's America and Biden's America, Democrats and Republicans. All right. Second Ezra, and what was going to lead to what you would call a famine. All right. Brother in his camp, Gabar, he just did a lesson on the famine over there, and I think it was Haiti, if I'm not mistaken, or was it in Nigeria? All right. You have famine coming to this place, Babylon. Second Ezra 15 and 17, a man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able to. And that's not just talking about America. All right. But ultimately, that's when it's the end. When the Constitution is being overridden here in Babylon and people cannot go into other cities due to the pandemic or whatever reason, boom. You know, you can't go over there to Cuba right now. Even if you're in Cuba, you can't travel to certain places. All right. So that's coming here to Babylon. For because of their pride, all right, and Jake over there has been prideful, Manasseh, 2/3 of our people that are over there. You got a lot of elect over there too, but a lot of the Jakes are in the witchcraft and the Christianity, the Santeria stuff, man, paganism. So the Lord is bringing judgment on them, and ultimately He's shaking that place up. For because of their pride, the cities shall be troubled, and the houses shall be destroyed, and the men shall be afraid. All right, why? Because the men are going to be afraid for their families, and they ain't going to be able to protect their family. All right, because of the pride of these cities, if the cities are troubled, then ultimately the people are troubled, and that brings you into what? The time of Jacob's trouble. It says, a man shall have no pity upon his neighbor. So that's what's about to happen. A lot of these same people that's marching with each other, they're not going to have pity on each other when it comes time to feed their families or themselves, but shall destroy their houses with the sword and spoil their goods because of the lack of bread and for great tribulation. All right, so that's what's happening, man. As we see it, all right, these are signs we're supposed to look for. Second Ezra 9:1. He answered me then and said, measure thou the time diligently in itself, and when thou seest part of the signs past, which I have told thee before, we're seeing it, then shalt thou understand. So we understand now that it is the very same time wherein the Most High will begin to visit the world which He made. Therefore, when there shall be seen earthquakes, we're seeing earthquakes all over the world, and uproars of the people in the world. All right. And the people are in uproars right now, over the famine and lack of medicine and the oppression of these ruling regimes and governments. Thou shalt then shalt thou well understand that the Most High spake of those things from the days that were before thee, even from the beginning, man. All right. All right. Now, Matthew 24 and 6. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See, we've been hearing about that. About World War III kicking off and Armageddon, or these proxy wars that's building up to direct hot wars between these major countries like Russia and China and America. And we're hearing about wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. See, these are signs to look for, but it's still not the end. All right. For nations shall rise up against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences. All right. Plagues or pandemics and famines, lack of food. All right. Lack of medicine and resources. It says, and earthquakes in diverse places. All these are the beginning of sorrows, man. So it's just beginning. It's going to get worse and worse, man. What we've never seen before. I can't even imagine. All right, Jeremiah 30 and 7. Alas, for that day is great. So it's going to be like we've never seen before, man. Never, it's going to be a great destruction and judgment. So that none is like it. It is even the time of Jacob's trouble, but he shall be saved out of it. So you got a lot of the elect that's over there in Cuba, you know. That's why a lot of brothers in this truth that's Spanish, they gotta be flooding them videos right now, dealing with this topic, speaking in Spanish, to reach our brothers and sisters over there in Cuba. Even though they have the media and the internet, they're disrupting it. All right, but the Lord is gonna wake up the elect over there, man, and he's gonna judge 2/3 of our people that are over there, and they're gonna wind up ultimately getting microchipped or getting destroyed in the sedition that's going to happen over there, or the famine, or the food. All right. Ultimately, this is coming to the place Babylon, America, but I'm focusing on Cuba right now. 2nd Ezra 16-22. For many of them that dwell upon the earth shall perish of the famine, not just in Babylon, but that dwell upon the earth shall perish of the famine. So it can be a worldwide famine. And the other that escape the hunger shall the sword destroy. All right. So the sword represents what? The gun, just any destructive instrument. All right. So it's going to be what? Sedition. Men are going to be invading one another and going crazy over there, just like in this place. All right. Read Isaiah 14 and 9. I'm ended here. Hell from beneath is moved for thee, to meet thee at thy coming. See, as America's moving towards their new world order or their agenda, at that same moment, the Lord is bringing hell upon this place. All right. You got sanctions from China, sanctions from Russia getting put on America. At the same time, in Britain, at the same time, you got America putting sanctions on, or they haven't removed their sanctions from Cuba and these smaller countries. All right. So every step that this place takes, especially Esau, every move they make and every trap that they set is really a trap for themselves. All right. Hell from beneath is moved for thee, to meet thee at thy coming. It stirreth up the dead for thee, man. So all the dead, all these nations, these heathen nations, and 2/3 of our people are being stirred up against Babylon, America. It have raised up from their thrones all the kings of the nations, man. All the big dogs, all these nations are coming together and seeing that America and their sanctions and their uh, embargoes are the problem, and their backdoor agreements and unrighteous decrees. All right, and breaking their covenants, their treaties. All they shall speak and say unto thee, art thou also become weak as we? art thou become like unto us? So someday Cuba is gonna be saying that about America. Yo, how did America become like Cuba? All right. Thy pomp is brought down to the grave, man. And that the grave is the same word as hell. It just means sorrow or low condition, you know, or affliction. All right. Or the ground. So thy pomp, thy pride, and the arrogancy of this place, the majesty of America, the riches and glory of America is going to be brought lower than Cuba is right now. Right, lower than a third world country like North Korea. Shit, damn, it might be like Ethiopia. People sitting outside butt ass naked with flies on them. You know. All right, so America's pomp is going to be brought down to the grave, to the ground, and the noise of thy vows, the worm is spread under thee, and the worms cover thee. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, man, son of the morning? Talking about Esau and all the establishment. All right, so people gonna see America fall and be weakened, just like America was used to weaken these nations. They say he enlarges his desire as hell and cannot be satisfied. All right, and heapeth unto him all people, man. Uh, so now it says this: how art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? So America is used to weaken the nations. All right, and that's why we see what's happening in Cuba with the tribe of Manasseh is ultimately set up for our deliverance. All right, all hell to break loose upon the whole earth, not just Cuba. All right. So I'm gonna end it there, man. Just be round one dealing with this topic of the uprising of the Manassites. All right, Cuba, the original Manassites of the Bible. Um, the the firstborn of Joseph. All right, when originally Ephraim and um, Manasseh was called one tribe under Joseph. All right, but the Lord um, put the blessing on Ephraim to be the lead nation, just like Judah. So all those nations gonna come back together, man. All right. So with that, I'm gonna say shalom.